This is really a tremendous opportunity to get a chance to reflect on the last 1.5 days, as Manny said, and maybe, in spirit around the last 10 years of tremendous work and pioneering efforts by the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation. I am aware that the hour is challenging because we're probably all eagerly awaiting lunch. There's almost nothing I like more than Indian cuisine, so I am personally very motivated to use only the amount of time that is necessary to convey a few thoughts that I think might be helpful to close this session. So one thing that you can always count on in a 3IE meeting is a lot of questions. There are policy questions like how to forestall the worst effects of climate change. And there are policy questions like how do we prepare the current generation and the next generation for the future of work, which looks so different from the past. And then there are questions that are more about specific research efforts. So does it work to pay communities not to cut down trees? And if you have an internship program that's intended to keep young people in the Philippines in school, a summer internship program, does it work to do that? And is that a way to reduce youth unemployment? So there are lots of those questions that we've heard. And then both on the panels and in the periphery, in the hallway conversations, there have been other questions. There have been questions like, what do I do if my funding isn't enough for a large enough sample size to actually be able to measure the difference that I think is necessary? And maybe how do I get published in the Journal of Development Effectiveness? Or maybe why does 3IE keep pestering me for progress reports? Don't they know that research is a slow and unpredictable process? So there are lots of these questions. And there are lots of reasons to ask these questions. So some of you might ask them because you're working on your dissertation and you want to finish it so you can publish, so you can get tenure eventually in an academic setting. Or you may be motivated to ask these questions because you are working at an NGO and you want to make sure that the beneficiaries are getting the most from the work that your organization does. Or you may be actually a policymaker and you may worry first that another ministry may look better than yours because they can back up their work with strong evidence. Or you may be really motivated to make sure that every tax dollar, every tax rupee, every tax shilling goes to something that is beneficial to the public. So those are really all good motivations for asking those questions. But now I'm going to turn to kind of deeper reasons for asking the questions that we all ask. And I want to just reflect for a moment on what the root of the word question is. And the root of the word question is quest. It's a searching, it's a seeking, it's a trying to get somewhere. And a quest is something that you probably never accomplish, you never finish, but you're always on a journey. And where are we trying to get? So I think that all of us, and a much broader community that works on bringing evidence into the service of good policy and practice, that all of us are motivated by a moral quest that has 4 dimensions. That we are seeking truth, and we're seeking justice, and we're seeking an inclusive future, and we are seeking to contribute to human progress. So those are really big ideas, but they are the ideas that people not long ago, maybe just last weekend, were marching in the streets of Delhi about in the March for Science. They are really crucial elements of a moral quest that we need to tap into to keep us motivated even when we feel like we're not being listened to by policymakers, by donors, maybe by our own friends and family who don't have a clue about why we're doing what we're doing. So let me just tackle each of these. And it's a little bit of a reprise of comments I've made in the past, so I apologize to those who have heard them before. I'll try to modify and update a bit. So first about truth. So in every society, in every community, the value of truth is upheld over the sin of lying. So when you see a mom who's punishing her child for lying about whether he did his homework, that's partly because she cares about his education and whether he's going to get a job. But it's mostly because she cares about who that child is turning into, about his moral core. And so this value of truth is really fundamental. It's not just instrumental. It is fundamental, and it's very much what we are working on. Hugh was talking about it just yesterday. So that translates into all parts of the data collection, the analytic work that we do. And I would just say it translates even to whether we report null effects. It translates into whether we push one study or understand that one study is further from truth than a collection of studies examined systematically. It translates into whether we are engaged in p-hacking or not. It translates into all of those things. So then let's think about the justice part. For a really long time, I think people who have engaged in empirical work, the analysts, the technocrats, that we have given over to a whole other community the word justice, to the human rights campaigners, and to people who are engaged in lots of important social struggles. But we have not claimed our space in those same social struggles. So the part of justice that I think we are most engaged in is distributive justice, the fair allocation of resources in a community, in a society. Now, part of the challenge of distributive justice is defining what's fair. What's fair between men and women, between young people and old people, between the people alive today and our descendants in, 2 or 3 or 7 generations. Those sorts of trade-offs have to be made based on a kind of social and political process around which empirical evidence can be informative, but it's not, that is not the driving force. But once those choices have been made, how are they put into effect? They can only be put into effect through the application of knowledge. Now, it's a range of knowledge. It's not all impact evaluations. But to translate an aspiration like universal primary education in Uganda into a reality where every child has learned what he or she needs to be a successful and thriving adult and a productive member of society, that translation from aspiration to reality depends on ongoing inputs of empirical analysis. And that is our role. So the fourth dimension is around inclusion. What do I mean by inclusion? I mean hearing from everyone. Hearing not just from the people who have the resources to get access to the public square, to politicians, not just the rich people or the loud people or the people who look like those in power. I mean everyone. And all of the people who work on projects that collect data are engaged in an inclusive process, one where each person has an equal voice. It's actually one of the only things in our society where each person has an equal voice is in empirical work where we're collecting data from individuals. And that is crucially important. And I think that the responsibility that we have in that is is really to make sure that we're doing that data collection in the most unbiased way possible, in a way that really is validly collecting information from the people we're purporting to represent when we report the results of our work. And I want to make it clear that this does not replace in any way the need for all of us to create more space for people to speak for themselves. And actually, I would really look forward to a future 3IE meeting where, on a panel where results are reported about anything, about community development projects, that we actually hear from a member of the community speaking about their own experience. That can only enrich our understanding. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about this pursuit of human progress. And, you know, again, across every society, every religious tradition, there is a real underlying value of always getting better, always contributing to make the world a better place. I mean, there are a lot of self-help books that are, you know, million sellers, and it's because we're always trying to be better people. And I think here, the role that all of us play is tremendously important. We have to get better, we have to know where we are. We have to identify promising ideas that can be tested, can be advanced, can be, as they say, scaled up. And there's a real responsibility, I think, in that to really be looking for ideas that have not already been tested and failed. So here, you know, the work of the systematic reviews, the evidence gap maps, and the commitment to advocate against bad programs, even as much as we advocate for promising ones. All of those are part of our responsibility in advancing human progress. So, you know, it turns out that when people turn more or less 10 years old, there's a developmental transition. And it goes from a time when they accept rules that are given by others, their parents usually, or their teachers, and they start integrating and taking on as their own a kind of moral reasoning, that they start understanding within themselves what they need to do to be good people. So I think that it is particularly appropriate at a time when the International Initiative for Impact Evaluation is turning 10 years old, that it's a time when we can have really live discussions about what it means to take on these moral responsibilities in all of the work that we do, not just with 3IE, but broadly in the evidence community. And it's not just a good time because it's the 10th anniversary of 3IE. It is a good time because it is 2018. And in 2018, there is nothing more important than the work we are doing with many, many others in pursuit of human progress toward an inclusive future for justice and for truth. So thank you very much, and I'm turning it over to Manny.